All right, and we should be live. Everything, all lights are lit. Looks good. Can I have one last audio-visual check? You should see Chefy Jeffy on the screen. Hear my voice. Yeah, basically I'm going to run the exercise live here. So I'm going to be, I guess, thinking out loud as I go through every bias. And you guys, I guess, do the same similarly. You look at the same screens I do. Flip through your charts or look at it on my screen and jot down on a piece of paper, what your bias would be, your all-in bias. You all know the rules here in terms of how it works. You need to have a bias, long or short, at the end of each asset. And we look at monthly, weekly, daily, and H4 and come up with a bias based on those from a purely technical perspective using the methodology we use. So, and then what we'll do is after the exercise, if we have time, we will run the sentiment one. The only reason I didn't want to run them together is because I want to do a pure example of the technical all-in exercise. And it can be confusing to run the sentiment one because in most cases, and I mean most because it's not always the case, but in most cases, your sentiment bias is going to be very different to your technical bias, because if you're ready to short something, it's because the market has been long for a while, which means that the sentiment all-in is an exercise, I guess, that really has to be separated, because all it's going to do, it's going to give you where you would go long or short, depending purely on sentiment without any consideration for technicals. And in order to put them together, it's a little bit different. You're not, because you can't go long and short at the same time. That makes no sense. If your technical bias is long and your sentiment bias is short, it's going to just give you analysis paralysis. It's not going to allow you to make any kind of get any type of conclusion out of the exercise. So the way that they're incorporated one into the other, it's basically by using the technical analysis to look for levels and the sentiment and all in to determine a baseline. But what you're really looking for is a deviation from that baseline at those levels that you identified through the technical aspect of charting. So again, we can go into that a little bit more in detail later. But for now, let's keep it as simple as possible. Just do the technical all-in exercise, and just watch me do it. If you've never done it before, you don't have to do anything. Just watch and see how it works. The idea is that you do this as often as possible, because it will build that muscle memory and will allow you to recognize certain patterns and certain I guess, chart presentations in an effortless way in the future. It allows you to really just quickly take a glimpse at a chart and determine your bias without having to spend too much time. It increases your efficiency. It increases your consistency in analysis, and it will also allow you to become more confident in your charting, allowing you to do it faster and without having any type of a hesitation about what you're seeing, whether you're getting mixed signals or not. Because in the all-in exercise, you can't really have mixed signals. You have to make a decision at the end of each asset. Are you long or are you short? There's no neutral, which makes some of the assets that actually do look neutral from a trade planning perspective kind of tricky to call. And some of those maybe is where we'll see our discrepancies in terms of what I think from an all-in perspective and what you think from an all-in perspective. And we can then discuss after the exercise if there are any differences between our biases on certain assets or not. And I think that's it in terms of the rules. Very simple. I'll go relatively slow compared to what I normally do for the exercise, because I'll be charting visually so you can see what I'm looking at. Normally what you'll do is you'll take just a few seconds per chart, and it shouldn't take you more than half a minute maximum per asset to come up with your all-in bias. Yep. But since I'm going to be charting it visually for you, it might take a little bit longer, which is also good for anybody who hasn't done this before to be able to see how it goes. Okay, and that's it. I'll try to go through as many assets as I can from our usual FX watch list. I'll include gold, I'll include oil. Maybe I'll put the DAX in there as well. Some of the other ones that we often trade, which are not specifically FX assets. Excuse me. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? Is it clear? We're just going to run a technical all-in exercise as the first part of this live session, and then do some comparisons. That's about it. And you're going to see what we look at a glance. We're trying not to over-analyze, right? We're trying to avoid that analysis paralysis that is created when what you're looking at in the screen is not registering clearly in your brain, just because you have indicators that go against each other or things that don't make sense from a technical perspective. So we're trying to kind of avoid all that and go with our gut instinct according to our technical knowledge. All right, it does say that I'm recording, Mikhail. Let me check on the server, see if there's a file being created, because that'll give me the confirmation that I need. And there is a file being created, so technically it is being recorded. Oh yeah, because I think I've changed the layout for the recording. I don't like to record the audio-visual pod that has certain other information because it takes up screen real estate that I just prefer to record the whole screen, and that's it. I don't know if Mike does it or shares the screen with the AV pod where you can see whether it's recording or not. But anyway, it is recording, or it seems to be recording, and if it's not, we'll just do this again some other day. It's not a big deal. Okay, everybody ready? We'll get started, and that's about it, I think. All right. If you get any lag in the visuals or anything goes off with the audio or anything, let me know in the Skype chat, and we'll correct it if possible. All right, so let's start with EuroCAD. And again, I'm not going to touch on any of the sentiment aspects of these assets or currencies, and we're just going to look at what technicals tell us in isolation, which is part of the exercise. And I'm going to just think out loud, okay? So just bear with me. So this is the monthly EuroCAD. It looks long to me from an all-in bias. And will take a little longer than usual than what this exercise would take on your own, just because, again, I'm charting just to give you an idea. So I've got a little bit of a support here that price is hitting, right? We've got the stochastics nice and buried there. We've got some of the MAs that this is riding. We have some sort of trend line, I guess, on the way up, and price is right in the confluence point of all those technical indicators. So I'm going to call the monthly long. Let's look at weekly. What do I see on the weekly? Let's see if we've got a fib there. We've got a fib. We've got that monthly support to take into consideration as well. The weekly, I'm probably going to call this bullish as well. So what do I have here that I like? Well, I've got that magic fib box there that I like to trade. We've got stochastics also kind of buried territory over here. Do we have any structure before that monthly level? We've got some structure here that looks interesting, right? Some support. Resistance, 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 and then support again, a little bit of a break of support, but a lot of wicks here. So we've got enough confluence for me to go all in long on EuroCAD on the weekly. Let's look at daily. And the daily is a little less long, right? I don't have to chart this. You can see here that stochastics are not in an ideal position for me for a long. There's a lot of choppiness and sideways price action. There's been a little bit of a pop into the MAs on the latest daily downtrend move. So we've got a little bit of a retracement. It's probably not the spot to long. I don't have any bottoming pattern here to say we got a lower low. There's no inverted head and shoulders. There's no nothing. It just does not seem like a place where I would want to go long In addition, we've got a price in the middle of a fractal SHI channel. So from a technical perspective, this is not a nice looking long. So I'm going to go neutral on the daily. We're going to move down to the H4. The H4, let's see, do I have a case for a long here? It does look like if I had to go all in, I would have to go long. Let's look at the reasoning why on the H4. Yep, price is in the middle of the SHI channel. That's not a big deal in this case. We do have a little bit of a trend line there. I see stochastics down. This is probably a fib level from this swing low to this swing high. Again, probably the 61.8 or even the 77.8 as well here. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. I think that if I had to go all in on EuroCAD 4 hour, I'd go long. So I've got pretty much 3 charts telling me to go long, 1 looking neutral. So my all in for EuroCAD would have to be long.